Hi, I'm Tracy, the E-Lightened artist, and this is the Wallke H7. It's a dual motor, long range, fat tires, step through, non-folding e-bike. Did I forget anything? Oh yeah, it's kind of sexy too. So today we'll be going over some range numbers and I'll give you my take on the bike so far. But first let's start with a few tips on assembly. Now like most bikes, it comes 85% put together, but being a dual motor bike, putting the front wheel on is a little bit more involved. And when I put together the rest of these bikes, I just drop the forks on the axle, tighten it up, and there you go. But when a front motor is involved, you're gonna need to flip it. First, you're gonna wanna install the handlebars and be sure to rotate the controls out of the way so you don't crush them. Then pull out the battery and carefully flip the bike onto a soft surface like carpet or the cardboard box. And take your time or get some help, because even without the front wheel on and the battery out of the bike, it's still a heavy beast. Once you've pulled the shipping spacers from the forks and out of the brake pads, you can just drop the wheel into place. Then a pair of torque spacers have to be pressed into the forks. I made a quick short on my technique for doing that, so I'll run that for you real quick.
So yeah, if you're having a hard time with that, in the instructions it says put all those on together, that's gonna be a little tricky and there's not quite enough thread to do that, so I'd worry about ruined threads. So I would put that torsion nut on there, use the acorn nut, press it into place, then take the acorn nut off, then put the outer torsion washer on, and then batten it all down. That's the way I did it, went on like a piece of cake.
And since the bike's shipped without the front wheel on, it's really important to adjust those front brakes or they will probably rub. I made a few videos about that too. Now once the bike is built, tightened, tuned, charged, you're probably wondering how far it'll take you. Now of course range is personal to each rider and of course the terrain and weather conditions of each ride. And on this bike it's complicated even further because there's 4 riding modes and up to 9 PAS levels. So I rode it to work 4 days in a row, each day in a different mode. You have rear wheel drive, all wheel drive, and eco all wheel drive, and then front wheel drive. And I did a little math to figure out what kind of range I got in each mode. I started each ride with a full charge on the battery and my tires were inflated to about 20 PSI. I kept all the settings at factory default, but I did swap out the pedals and I added sealant to the tires. I also added turn signals, which weigh next to nothing. I, on the other hand, am almost 6 foot tall, weigh 175 pounds, and I was carrying about 25 pounds worth of gear. I rode each day on PAS 5, which is the highest PAS at the factory default. You can also switch it to 1 to 3 or 1 to 9, but it comes 0 to 5. And the commute is relatively flat terrain. And it was really nice weather all week in the valley. So on day 1, I just rode rear wheel drive, and that is powered by a 1000-watt hub motor. I did have the bike connected to the app to track mileage, but I didn't really mess with the navigation. It works pretty good, I just kept forgetting to turn it on. I'm kind of simple like that. I really liked the feel and handling of the bike. It wasn't super quick, but it wasn't slow either. Yeah, this thing weighs like 108 pounds, and with me and my gear, it's what, 308 pounds? It was a really pleasant ride to work, and between tattoos, I actually snuck out and rode around downtown to take some pics and play around. It's kind of hard to work when you've got a sweet new bike parked out front. So I ended up putting 24.5 miles on it that day and I used 38% of the 40 amp hour battery. So by my calculations, that would be 67.45 miles per charge in the rear wheel drive mode. Now on day 2, I went all wheel drive. I was looking forward to that. And it was cool. All that torque and pep was awesome. Now that didn't really transfer to higher speed, but you got up to speed real quick. So I rode 21.5 miles on that commute and used 45% of the battery. So that would net 47.73 miles per charge in the all-wheel drive mode. So in all-wheel drive mode, your range takes a hit, obviously, but it is fun. So if I know I'm only going 20 miles to work and back, I'm probably gonna ride it in all-wheel drive. Now day 3 was a total wild card. I had no idea what to expect. I rode it in the 2-wheel drive eco mode and surprise, surprise, it was eco. Both motors would get you going up to speed, but it wasn't nearly as torquey or quick. It was really mellow. And it had a little bit less top speed too. At about 28 miles per hour or so, the front wheel would taper off and you just cruise rear wheel drive. But yeah, the oomph was totally gone. It was pretty much oomphless. I can see it having its uses for like a long, hilly greenbelt ride or trail ride, but for me, it was kind of a snore fest. But check these numbers. I went 19.7 miles and only used 30% of the battery, which maths out to 65.6 miles per charge. So it actually did better than just full power to the rear wheel, but it was kind of lame. And for the last mode, we're gonna get a little lamer. Okay, I live in Idaho, and here we do not front wheel drive. But for the sake of this experiment, I rode to work in front wheel drive. And it sucked. Until I did the math. Let's see, I rode 18.4 miles, slow miles, and only used 24% of the battery. That comes to 76.54 miles per charge. So that's the best of the bunch right there. But even in PAS5, it topped out at like 24 miles per hour. And I'm honestly not putting a whole lot of stock in these numbers either, because it is nearly impossible to have a constant control on these range experiments unless you like put it on a dyno or something all day like homeboy from Area 13. I'm willing to bet that I can improve these numbers though. Now that the battery's been through a few charge cycles and the gears and the tires are starting to break in a little bit, it's bound to perform better. They always do. Plus I was running at only 20 PSI, which is a little on the soft side. And I did that because I hadn't installed liners yet, and this valley is plagued with goat head thorns. And I'll bet I'll see better top speed and range once I get my Tannus liners in there, because I can get those wheels nice and firm and not worry about thorns. And as for comparing the H7 to the original H6 step-through or the step-through Max, it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges and jackfruit. Besides the rack and the swing arm, this H7 is its own animal. This bike does not fold, and I think they went with a much thicker aluminum stock. You actually access the controller through the side cover here. And they dumped the whole 2-battery concept, so only 1 battery on this bike. But you can opt for the 60 amp hour battery. It's just a little bit taller, it has the same footprint, but 40 amp hours is fine for me. And I actually don't mind having just 1 battery because you're not having to like plug in 2 different chargers. Problem is they did not put the hinge mechanism in the seat post like they did the old bikes. So in order to pull this battery, you actually do have to pull the seat, but at least they did mark it here so you can tell where to put it back real easy. And speaking of the seat, this is a much softer silicone gel than what we got on the old seats. So that's really nice. And of course the handlebars you get with the H7 and the step-through Max are a trick. I really like them. They're great in form and function. And of course the cockpit's laid out just like the Max. You get the twist throttle, the really sharp display which connects to the Key Disp app. It's got a USB port down here. Of course I added a phone holder and my turn signal controller there, and you gotta have a rear view mirror. Now, of course, the forks are all new. They're machined to take those torque washers in the front hub motor, but they've also got much longer travel. You can see how short the old H6 was and how much more aggressive the stance is. And of course, it rides great. And of course, you have your preload adjustment and your lockout. And of course, the focus and brakes we're putting on these bikes now are boss. They are a little bit trickier to adjust, so take your time with that. But once you have them dialed in and they get burned in, they are boss. As for the CFT tires that come on these bikes, I've got a few miles on my Wallke H6 Max with those tires. They're okay. I prefer the Kenda Crusades that they used to put on these bikes. They're a little bit more aggressive. I have a little bit more confidence in them, but that's a bit of a nitpick. These CSTs might actually be a little quicker because they are less aggressive, but I prefer the Crusades personally. And of course, the gearing on these bikes leaves a lot to be desired if you want to feel some pedal. And that actually seems to be a common theme throughout the entire e-bike market. So here soon, I will be upgrading the chainring and the freewheel. I'll be making a video about that. So definitely slug that bug and bell and check back with me, see how that goes. And I really didn't dive into like the app and the settings on this bike. If you have any questions about that, let me know. Maybe I'll add that to a future video. But I did turn on the auto headlight setting. That's pretty cool. When it gets dark, the headlights come on, or if you live somewhere where you're riding through tunnels, that's pretty cool. But if you have any questions about any of that stuff, just let me know in the comments, and if I don't know it, I'll dig into it and find out for you. And Tannus Armour is going to be sending me some more products, so I'll be hooking you guys up again. but this is mine. So until then, thanks for watching, and special thanks to Wallke e-Bikes, Tannus Armour, Cafferty Cyclery in downtown Nampa, and Xnito helmets. Cheers.
Move it, hippie.
Yeah, later.